Welcome in, everyone, to a new episode of Cedar Radar. My name is Brad. Sydney is out this week, if you haven't noticed, but I am here with a replacement, temporarily replacing Marin Klein. How are you?
I am so good, Brad. How are you?
I am just living the dream. It's another day in Michigan. Can't complain. It is great. So Marin, you do a bunch of stuff. Obviously, Big Ten Plus play-by-play for Michigan State hockey. Then you're also on the beat with Impact Radio doing women's basketball. So, how has that all been going?
It has been going great. Very thankful to be doing play-by-play this year for Big Ten. Plus, I was mostly a sideline reporter last year and kind of got moved up this season, which it has been a fantastic season to cover. So couldn't ask for more there. And women's basketball, this is my second year on the beat. Definitely been fun to watch this brand new team. Definitely, there's been some ups and downs for sure. But yeah, both awesome to be a part of.
Yeah, and I guess so. Just kind of jumping in with Michigan State hockey. Obviously, it's coaching change, and you did a bunch of stuff with like last season. You were no stranger as well. There was Danton Cole was sort of much different coach. I was actually just on a podcast with Matt Sheehan, who does the Locked On Spartans stuff today, and I was talking about how really it's just been kind of a breath of fresh air in the sense that Danton Cole, even like the playing style too, like Danton Cole was very like physical brand of hockey, whereas Adam Nightingale feels like it's much more modern, much more the pace of play is different, right? Like the players are buying into what he's selling, and it just feels like a better vibe. I guess also like the crowd support's been incredible. So I mean, you're on campus too. Like, do you feel it? Do you feel the people like getting excited for Michigan State hockey?
Oh, I definitely can. I think last year there were people excited to go, but it was a very different season than the one we've been seeing this year. And you can tell how excited people are. I've had people come up to me and be like, you do things with the hockey team. Like, just they're very excited about it. And I think in terms of Michigan State sports, it's been kind of an interesting year in terms of the teams we're getting excited about. And I think around campus overall, everyone's been really excited about this hockey team, really liking, like you said, the energy and just the style of play. It's very fun to watch. It's very fast paced and aggressive, and it's quite different from what Dan Cole coached when he was at the head. So I definitely think that it's been all around very good vibes around campus.
Yeah, and like, so, I mean, even God, it's just like last season. I get these flashbacks, right? Like you would see Michigan State, like compete, like with Notre Dame, for example. Like they kept up with them last year, right? Like they kept playing them. I remember watching them. I'm like, wow, this is actually good game. We're making that next step, but then it comes to generating any offense, and like, I mean, you saw like Dennis Sasana or some of those, like even Krieger, the Krieger twins, I guess I should say, they were really like putting together a lot of the scoring. And I feel like a lot of that was because just this team did a couple things right. And like they could, like defensemen would take shots from the point and they'd be the ones to score, or something similar. It was just very non-creative, if you will. This year, it seems like Adam Nightingale has gotten them to find ways to generate offense, right? I mean, you saw, I play video games a lot, and I know that there's a way to score, right? Like, one-time shots are incredible. Alex Ovechkin makes a name for himself off of that. But something I would always do in the NHL video games is I'll pass it to the weak side, and then I'll have the one guy one-time it in. Well, it seems like Carson Dorwart and Jagger Joshua have replicated that on the ice. And, I mean, that's very exciting. But as far as Jagger Joshua goes, I mean, that's an improvement as well.
He is one of those players. It's something that I've been talking about with a lot of different people this season. There were players who were returning players, were on the team last year, and they've had an enormous impact on the team this year. Jagger Joshua was definitely one of them. Nico Mueller, another one. Players you saw a little bit from last season, and this season they've completely Jagger Joshua. I mean, he's leading the team now with 11 goals, and I think that's really cool to see. You can tell who like really fits in with this style of play, and there are some players on the team who were huge last season and have kind of, I wouldn't say slowed down, still playing good, but you can see how this style of hockey that Adam Nightingale is coaching has affected, and how it's kind of how each player is taking it in and making it their own.
Yeah, and I think too. I mean, some of it goes in. I mean, I think that Eric Middendorf comes to mind, right? In
Yeah.
terms of that, I mean, a part of it I feel like has to do with the line that he's been put on. I don't know that necessarily if that's I mean, I'd like to think that it's fair to him, right? I mean, Nightingale's been pretty fair about everything else. I mean, he's the guy that has a -10 though on his on his score sheet, but at the same time, like, who's he playing with? I mean, he was on the fourth line for a while, and Dubinsky usually rides that line. He's at -7. Just players like, I mean, Jalen's at -5. Like what I guess what I'm getting at though is it's like, it depending on who you play with. I mean, that's kind of gonna be your MO, right? Like, Jagger Joshua, who's he play with? His, plus minus is +5, but at the same time, like, Daniel Russell, he's on the ice for a lot of goals. Carson Dorward as well. Like, I mean, and all of those players, by the way, have been on. I mean, they're all on the same line. They're all scoring, high scoring, right? Like, Carson Dorward has 22 points. Daniel Russell also 22. Jagger Joshua 18. Like, that is just, I don't know. Like, they're all freshmen too. I mean, not Joshua, but Dorwart and Russell are both freshmen, and so like that is also very surprising. Just the young players that Nightingale, not most of them didn't come from Nightingale's recruiting, right? Like, that I think is a big part of this, right? Like, the only one that I think really comes to mind when it comes to freshmen that join, because you got to remember, like, players plan to come to
Yeah.
college, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, while Nightingale did recruit a lot of guys before the season started, most of those players won't be on campus until next year,
Yeah.
right? Because they'll probably be playing junior hockey if they're 18 and, yada, yada. But as far as like Jalen's one of the only guys that Nightingale recruited before the season. He's on campus right now. And I mean, he's pretty, average when it comes to the additions on the roster. Dorwart and Russell, like, how big of a surprise has that been?
I think that they've definitely been a very big surprise, but I do remember as I was prepping for that first game, exhibition game against the national development team, and Dorward and Russell, they had been on a line together for their USHL team. And I think that was a really important factor coming into this season, because most of these players, lines got switched up and lines were changing a lot those first couple of weeks. They were still getting used to each other on the ice. Before that national development team game, they weren't even allowed to have full practices yet, as just like an NCAA rule. And so I think it was really interesting to see how those two came in and kind of just clicked right off the bat, because they were so comfortable with each other. And at first, I remember Jagger Joshua saying a lot that he was kind of the big body. He was there to kind of help these two out, and now he's the top scorer on the team. And that line has obviously had a lot of production, which has been great, especially great to see from two freshmen who are going to be with the team for a significant amount of time. But I think that was such a big thing with those two. The rest of the freshmen have all had fairly good first seasons, but I think those two, and I think a huge part of Dorwart and Russell just being such high performing players for Michigan State is that they were already very comfortable with each other coming into the season, and were playing pretty similar styles of hockey to what they're playing with Coach Nightingale.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that helps too, because they played at with Sioux Falls, right? And that's just crazy, I guess. Just to see the amount of production that we're getting. I remember when they first came on, I was like, wow, like, I just did not anticipate, the season to be going as well as it had been. And, obviously Michigan State hit that speed bump, with the 7 out of 8 losing, right? So they lost to Minnesota. Then they lost to, then they beat Michigan, which was impressive. Then they lost to Michigan. Then they lost to GLI. Then they lost both to Ohio State. But I think, like, the Ohio State games were specifically hard to watch because you thought that this team had sort of taken a fall off a cliff. Now, how important would you say that it was for Michigan State to sort of regain their footing against Penn State?
Oh, I think that was extremely important. Coming into that game, I think a lot of people were kind of questioning the team. They'd kind of fallen off a little, but Coach Nightingale said this, and I really liked it, that in college hockey and hockey in general as a sport, it's very hard to just stay on a constant streak. Things are going to change. Teams are going to have dips. They're not going to do well for a period of time. And obviously there are some like powerhouse teams that you don't see too much of that from. But Michigan State is still fairly new to being in the rankings. This is a team that really didn't see a lot of wins in the past couple of years. And I think the timing of it made a lot of sense, given that after that second game against Michigan, there was a little bit of break, then went to the GLI, had some tough games there. You could see the team looked tired. They looked slow. They weren't really playing at the pace that they had been. And it was the same in the Ohio State series. And I think a huge thing throughout that losing streak was their penalty minutes. And that was still a very relevant part of the Penn State series. And they did a great job of killing off a lot of those penalties. I mean, in the first game against Penn State, the 2 Penn State goals came from a 5-on-3 scenario. There were 2 5-on-3 scenarios. That's not something any team is going to want. And I think the penalty minutes have played a huge factor in these games that Michigan State has had. And I think the Penn State game was a great way. It was first time back at Munn, a great way to just kind of get that confidence back up, get a little momentum going, because the schedule is not going to get any easier. Big Ten hockey is a very hard conference to be a part of.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't help that the size is not great. So like it's also like the size of the conference isn't big, right? So like most years you have 5 or 6 teams that are just very, very good. In this case, you have 6, right? So like, Michigan's really good. Minnesota's obviously really good. Michigan State has stepped it up. The only team that really isn't playing up to par is Wisconsin. And you know what I mean? Like, you're just like, it's one of those conferences where everybody plays everybody. You don't get that in the CCHA. You don't get that in, these larger conferences like the NCHC. Like, just it's such a hard conference, I think, to be a part of, and especially the parity too. Like, I mean, you see it. 6 out of 7 teams in the Big Ten are ranked, and you see too, like Ferris State swept Minnesota State. Like, that was incredible. And like, you're just seeing all these guys where like, or these teams where, anybody can beat anybody. I truly believe that. Like, Wisconsin beat Michigan once, so like, I think it's interesting too, because the Penn State series was huge for Michigan State to get their footing back, because that's important. And I mean, Michigan State, yes, they get a bye week this week, but like, what are they going to do differently, that they've learned, I guess I should say, from playing Minnesota once? Now they got to play them again, but this time on the road. That doesn't get any easier, right? Like, their next maybe easy games, right, is against Wisconsin at the end, because they go Minnesota, I think they go Notre Dame next, then Michigan, then Wisconsin. So like, those are very hard. Those are going to be very hard, right? Like, the easiest before Wisconsin might be, playing Notre Dame, who they do have at home. Then they got Michigan, obviously, in East Lansing, then Detroit, then they play Wisconsin in Wisconsin, I think. Although it's, but at the same time, like, they could lose one of those games to Wisconsin. It's just the parity is very, like, very, very even, it feels like, and anybody can really compete with anybody. One guy that's really stood out, though, is Dylan St. Cyr, who has been, and I know that Michigan State fans haven't really seen him in the past, right? Like, if you've kept up with Michigan State hockey, maybe you have, because Dylan St. Cyr was the goaltender at Notre Dame for 3 years,
Yeah.
because he was at Quinnipiac last year and then Notre Dame before that. So like Dylan St. Cyr he was always a solid goalie, but never like show-stoppingly good, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that he's been important to this team has been crazy. Like how much like how surprised were you when Michigan State got St. Cyr and he's been doing what he's been doing?
I don't think I was necessarily too surprised they picked up a goalie after DeRidder left. DeRidder was a fantastic goalie for Michigan State, held that team last year through a lot of struggles. And while I think Pierce Charleston is a great goalie, he just hasn't had a lot of time like as the starting goalie. And so looking at St. Cyr, looking at his resume, it's not too shocking. But I definitely didn't. I don't think most people expected the performance that we're getting from him. I mean, he's made some absolutely incredible saves. I've been lucky enough to call a decent amount of them. And like they've left, I think, everyone, Michigan State and anyone in college hockey, just in awe at some of the saves. He made some fantastic saves. I think it was the second period of the first game against Penn State that one of the Penn
Something
State
like that,
guys
where he was
went over his shoulder. He stayed up completely and then still dove outside to stop. Like it's incredible the way he sees the puck. And looking at him before the season started, he had fairly average statistics as a goalie. It wasn't anything like insane, anything super worth note. He was a good goalie. He played at some very high competing schools. And he seemed like a good pickup, but I don't think anyone could have expected the amazing things he's been doing this season.
Yeah, I think that it could have gone either way, right? Like the way I've always thought about it, I guess, is that when coming into this year, because I liked Pierce Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Like, he was a very good goalie, and I'm sure that we'll probably, if I had to predict anything, we'll probably see like a tandem operation in net next year, right? Because I'm thinking that Trey Augustine's going to get some time.
Yeah.
Pierce Charleston might get some time. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, Charleston might transfer. We don't know,
Yeah.
right? Anything can happen in this day and age of college hockey. But I guess my larger point, though, is like that's what I was thinking would happen this season, is that we might see some sort of tandem between, splitting time between Charleston and St. Cyr. I think that early in the season, Nightingale put, Charleston in net. He got the win. He gave up like 4 goals, though, but so that's, I guess the thing is, save percentage also wasn't very impressive, but it's nothing like when we saw at Charleston's greatest moments last year. But again, didn't really have the time. And Charleston saw some time last year. I think back to one of the games against Minnesota, and Michigan State played pretty well. I wouldn't say that they played incredible against Minnesota, but again, it's Minnesota,
Yeah.
and Minnesota always has good teams. But I do remember there was one game where I was sitting next to Jess Myers when this statistic broke out. But Charleston, before that game, I think he had a bunch of saves against Wisconsin, I think. But really the big note of the game, though, was that he had like 54 saves in the game.
I think I remember that.
And that was just
I remember that game.
Absolutely crazy
Yeah.
to me, Like, because, I mean, here's this guy who's not even the number 1 goalie on the team, and he's out here making half 100 saves, Like, that was just, like, those are number 1 goalie numbers.
Oh, yeah.
But Michigan State has had, even though they've had some pretty bad teams over the last couple of years, I think that it's helped them that they've had pretty solid goaltending. So, and that's good that they get next year. Like I don't know how much you heard about Trey Augustine, but Trey Augustine looks like the real deal,
Yes,
right? Like
he
at the
does.
NTDP, he looks like he's putting up some heavy numbers. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see him.
I'm definitely excited. I mean, just watching him in that first exhibition game of the season against the national development team, he was a fairly solid goalie. Now, again, those national national development teams come in and everyone's like, these are a bunch of like 17-year-olds going up against college kids. Like they're going to get, no, the national development team will blow out anyone because they're like the best players in the country and they can. Um, Anyone coming from that team is definitely the real deal. And Nightingale is going to be one to know that, having worked for the program. So I think that Trey Augustine is going to bring a lot to Michigan State. I think goaltenders have never really, like you said, never really been an issue. Um, this is only my second year at Michigan State, so I don't know the full history, but I know last year Cedar Radar was great. Obviously, St. Cyr's doing great. Charleston's a good goalie. I don't think in any games he's played this season he's necessarily done anything wrong. I just think St. Cyr's been showing up and really standing out.
I mean, the way that I look at it is that he's only had the one game as the opportunity, right? And I think that Nightingale almost used it as like a test drive to see where he's at or what, he's up to. But I honestly, here's my thing. I just really think that St. Cyr has been so good and he has the experience that I think that if Nightingale wants to win, you put the best goalie in net.
Agreed.
And St. Cyr is the best goalie, right? Like I don't care if St. Cyr gives up 6-7 goals in a night, or 6-7 goals, one night, and then the next game, like some teams might, give the guy a break, right? I just don't think that he's that type of goalie. I think you put him right in after and let him get that confidence back just because he's that type of goalie.
Agreed. And I think there have even been some games that have been some rough losses. And I think the first people in hockey, that like the first person, any hockey fan or someone they'll be like, it's the goalie's fault. I don't necessarily believe there are some goals that no one's going to stop. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do about that. And so if Michigan State loses by, I believe, was it 5? Notre Dame put up 5 goals against Michigan State in one of the games of the series.
Yeah, I mean the next game he did a much better job.
Exactly,
I think
yeah.
that it was I think it was a 1-1 game or something like that, or maybe
because that was
the
overtime. There was an overtime game,
right?
Yeah.
It went into a shootout. You know what I mean? Like, so the way I see it is that in hockey, I guess in specifics. Like, a lot of people point to goals against average. I just saw this the other day with the Red Wings. Like, people were blaming Phil Husso for, a couple, goals or whatever. And, a lot of people would argue that the Red Wings, like, right now, their defense sucks. Like, let's just be honest, right?
Not a Red Wings
from
fan,
an NHL standard,
yeah.
their defense isn't great. So the way that I see it is that maybe Husso would be better if he had a good defense in front of him, right? Like, a lot of people are like, okay, Nedeljkovic isn't good, okay? And he just got sent down to the AHL. And that's like, yeah, he might be struggling right now, but also, like, he was good when he was with Carolina. Carolina had a good defense. A lot of goalies that are average, that are like that, need that good defense. Goals against average, if you just judge someone by the amount of goals that they give up, like, that is like, judging pitchers in baseball on how many wins they get.
Yeah.
Or, same thing in hockey, really, with goalies' wins and losses. But I think that, like, goals against average is largely a team statistic. And, that would, like, judging a goalie, let's compare it to baseball again. Judging a goalie based off how many goals they give up sometimes can feel like you are, like, say a pitcher makes a play in baseball, or I'm sorry, not the pitcher, but like a fielder makes an error, right? And the fielder, like, because of the error, the runner scores, right? Like, in baseball, that's not counted because it was an error, right? In goaltending, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, if your team if you don't have a good defense in front of you, you can't really blame the goalie for not stopping the shot, because, like, for example, if there's a defensive breakdown, I mean, you can't stop a 2-on-0 breakaway or a 2-on-1. Like, those are just things that cannot be mitigated once the defense breaks down. So, it's tough, right? So, like, that's the way I guess I feel about goaltending in general. And like I said, I mean, even in cases where maybe it seems like St. Cyr is giving up 4 goals in a game, I guess I don't care. He's been solid all season long, and and every goalie has a bad game every now and then. So
Agreed. I think this goes for every sport, but in hockey a lot you'll see a team go down and a lot of people will go straight for the goalie, and it's not an accurate reflection because again, it's all the goalie is not the person controlling the whole game. So if someone comes after St. Cyr being like he should have saved that, like there's some instances where like that's ow, falling. That's not going to happen. And this is an example I think no one in Detroit's going to like because I am from Massachusetts. I am a Boston Bruins fan, but I'll get lots of heat for that later. But obviously, the Bruins are having a pretty phenomenal season. And when there are losses,
yeah, it's Patrice Bergeron. That's who it is.
Yeah, you'll go onto Twitter.
He's the guy.
You'll go onto Twitter, and when we lose, no one's really going after the goalie because this season you just can't go after Linus Ullmark. Like you can't. He's leading almost every statistic in the NHL. But he's not going to save every shot. That just doesn't happen. So people go for the defense. So I think in other terms, it's like for other teams, it's just people will go right for the goalie, and not every goalie is going to have a perfect game. That's an incredibly hard thing to do, especially in hockey. When you're going up against a different team every night, those pucks are coming at you. There were a lot of times during that Penn State series where St. Cyr had 3-4 shots just back to back, and MSU did it on the same side to Soulier, and I think both goalies did a remarkable job just stopping those shots. So when people come after goaltenders in hockey, I just think, there's sometimes it's justified, but I think for the most part, like it's not just the goaltender, the whole team contributes to stopping the offense.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I think I do remember specifically about the World Junior Championships. It was so funny because Trey Augustine only missed one game for USA in that series, and it was I can't remember. Oh my God, I can't remember it might have been against Slovakia actually.
I think it was because
it was like the one game where Trey Augustine was about to face his former teammate in Maxim Strabak, who they're both MSU commits, right? Mm-hmm. The only MSU commits in the actual tournament. They were both part of the same group. Well, Strabak played, of course, but I can't remember the other goalie's name, but he started instead. And, it turns out that, he ended up losing the game and ended up actually giving up like a goal right away. Mm-hmm. Like it was like a stupid 5-hole shot that but it's easy to feel that way. I feel like, you're like, I could have stopped it. And I'm like, okay, go out there and do it then. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, just stupid stuff, right? Like it's like I'm not in that situation. I don't know what the goalie saw, so I feel like it's very easy for me to just be like, that was stupid. And I'm like, yeah, but like I'm not the one out there. I don't know.
That's such a funny thing because as an announcer, most of my job, more of the color analyst job, is just to kind of talk about how the team's playing, what they're doing, and it'll always make me laugh. Someone will say something and be like, should have stopped that. That should have been an easy save. Or that shot should have gone in. Like, you go and do it. It's not a super easy thing to do. And that's always I think that's such a funny thing coming from announcers now, obviously. As you go higher up, color analysts especially are usually people that have played hockey. So they're a bit more justified to say those things. And I'm definitely guilty of this. I've probably done it too, where I've been like, that should have been an easy save, or that shouldn't have been anything you got a penalty for. Like it's so funny when people are like that because you go out on the ice and do
right,
it.
But we don't play the game. It's hard to, and I don't know. I think about this same sort of like third person sort of feeling when it comes to like refs, right? Yeah. Like I talk about, I hate blaming the refs. I am like an anti-blame the ref person just because I know how hard being a ref is. Mm-hmm. Like it's not that I know. I've never been a ref, but like, you want to complain about balls and strikes, go out and do it. You know what I mean? Like they have to make a split-second decision. They can't delay, they can't like think about it. It would take me, do you know how much processing power it would take me to go out and be like, that's a strike? No idea. Yeah, I can tell because there's a little square on the
Yeah,
screen. But you know what I mean? Like that's
it's
really it, you know?
yeah,
That's hard. It's hard for you to tell. Or like same thing with like with refs. I mean, half the penalties that they call, it's like I didn't see it. You know, I mean, I could see like interference, but like when I think it's interference, it's not interference. You know what I mean? Like it's just I'm not a rules expert. I'm not here to, you know.
yeah. It is funny. I did go. There was a Zoom call that the Big Ten officials were doing on hockey rules that I was invited to, and I decided to go to because I thought it would be beneficial, and it really was. Because I don't know if you remember this.
Oh, I remember getting invited to that. I
Yeah,
didn't go cuz I had a class.
yeah, I was able to go. I was actually in a class, but the class was sports journalism. So my professor was okay with me hopping on a Zoom call during that class. Luckily, MSUJ school will be helpful in those ways. But I'm trying to remember which series it was. I know I was announcing it, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But Tanner Kelly got a major penalty for contact to the head, check to the head, something like that.
Probably cuz that's what cuz the specific like the video thing was the seminar was about those rule changes
And
and
it,
contact
yes,
to the
and it
head and
was right
challenging it.
after that. And I remember, I feel like it might have been the Long Island series
Yeah, that's what
because
I'm
I
thinking because it was right
remember,
around that
I
time.
remember
Yeah.
watching. We had replays running as the officials were discussing it, and what had happened was more like the whoever had the puck had tripped, and Tanner Kelly was just there. It wasn't
Right, and
anything.
there's nothing that he could have
There was
done.
nothing that he could have done. He was there, and that's just he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Gets called for the major. Everyone's on the MSU side is just furious, and even I, as an announcer, again, didn't really exactly say it on air, but afterwards, I just remember talking to some people and being like, "He tripped. Like it wasn't anything out of intention." But now in hockey, in college hockey, it's a rule that just any contact to the head, doesn't matter what, at minimum is going to be a 5 minute major out of protection for the players, which wasn't a rule that I know. It was a new rule. It's new this year. So I didn't know that that had changed. And I think that's a really beneficial thing to know, especially as an announcer, not every fan.
Because you're the person that everyone goes to
Mm-hmm.
for that information, right?
Uh-huh. And I wish I had known that. I think I had said like contact to the head. Sometimes that's always just going to get called, and I was technically right. Wish I could have gone more in depth in it, but obviously didn't. And I just think, like you said, when people come for officials, there are rules and there are things in there that they have to go by that you're not going to know. I doubt anyone outside, unless like there were probably people. I was talking to someone who worked for another a different college team, and I was talking to them about it, and they were like, I had no idea. Like I wouldn't have known that. I probably would have been furious at the refs. It's one of those things where when it comes to in any sport, but especially in hockey, there's the officials are have a big impact on the game, and those knowing those rules, I think, really dictate the way the game's going to go. And in that game, MSU still came out on top. And I just remember that 5 minute major just being stuck in everyone's head. But it wasn't like the refs thought that Tanner Kelly did it with intention whatsoever, but it was a hit to the head. So it's going to get called every single time as a 5 minute major. And that's just how it works now.
Yeah, and I thought, well, and it's interesting too that you brought that up. And I'm sorry that we're kind of going off on tangents right now. But I mean, it's important conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember specifically, Jagger Joshua was the victim of a contact to the head actually one game,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember this specifically because I kept sitting there and I was just I was pondering this scenario. But basically, what happened is Jagger Joshua got hit to the head, right? So Nightingale challenges the play, right? So he calls a timeout. He challenges the play for contact to the head, and it was they were successful. So like the other player, I cannot remember the series, but the other player got a 5-minute penalty for contact to the head, right? And I don't know that he was ejected. I don't think so, but anyway, he got the penalty for contact to the head, right? So, and I remember it was Jagger Joshua because he was out in the power play the very next play, and I was like, why? Why is that allowed? You know what I mean? Like if someone, for player safety, like if we are protecting, if our goal is to protect the players, shouldn't that player, he just got his head hit, shouldn't he now have to go into some sort of concussion protocol or get cleared somehow? Like, he just sat over there on the bench, and I mean, they approved that it was contact to the head. And like, I just don't know the rule is doing what we think it should be doing, right? Because I mean, like you said, it can be any sort of contact to the head, no matter how egregious, no matter how, but if we want to make sure the player's okay, then I don't think that he should have been out there on the next play.
I think I see where you're coming. I think the reasoning with that is more just any contact to the head is going to get called no matter what. I think the NCAA,
regardless
Big Ten,
if it actually harms the actual person.
They are being so on top of it from just trying to minimize those head injuries that any contact is now, obviously, if there's a player gets hit to the head down on the ice or it's a particularly hard hit, they're going to be sitting out. But if it's something like, I'm trying to remember which series this was, because
Do you remember what game I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, and I just can't remember who we were playing, but I know what you're talking about. And so I think in terms of how that hit was, I mean, in that time too, he was probably, I wasn't looking at the bench, but I'm sure he was probably assessed. They're going to have a quick concussion protocol, but I think,
yeah, I mean, they take a break to review the play anyway.
I think in terms of that rule, obviously players are still going to be checked, but in terms of the player getting back out on the ice, because it was the same thing with the Tanner Kelly major, that the player that was hit in the head was right back on the ice again for the power play. So I don't think it's a rule that the player can't get back on the ice. It's a rule out there kind of, I think its intent is to kind of keep players away from making those dangerous hits and knowing that that's not going to slide in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's just the NCAA's way of kind of locking down on that head contact to kind of train players into not doing it.
Right. No, and I get it. I mean, I don't know. It was just, I guess it was just a little odd to me. I mean, it does suck though that like they don't really relay that information a lot of the time to some other, some of the media who has to cover it. I mean, it's not like football. When you cover a football event, I mean, they tell you exactly everything that's happening on the field. And whereas in hockey, that's not necessarily always the case.
From an announcer standpoint, that one is frustrating. I will agree.
Isn't it? So I don't know. But anyway, I did want to transition a little bit. Obviously we had a great hockey season so far. So I want to talk about women's basketball. Now you have the opportunity you're on the beat for the women's basketball, the beat, as I should say, for Impact Radio. You just got done with a podcast with them, actually. What is that podcast called?
It is called the Breslin Breakdown. It is on our website. Any episodes that we share get reposted on my Twitter, on Impact's Twitter. Join in. We always have a very fun time, even if sometimes covering the team is a little bit difficult with their ups and downs. But that's the Breslin Breakdown.
Yeah, so I saw, and I was looking into a couple things. So I saw that this team is very streaky. So this podcast is being recorded on Tuesday night for those listening. It'll be posted on Wednesday morning. Wednesday night, Michigan State actually plays against Iowa, right? So tell me a little bit about this team. How has that been? Again, I saw that they were streaky. They won a bunch in a row.
Yeah.
They lost a bunch in a row. And they won some. Now they're on a 3-game losing streak, is it?
Yes. Yeah, 3-game losing streak. This team, see, so this is my second year covering the team, and last year the team was shaping up to actually be very good and just got absolutely plagued with injury at the start of the season. Two of their top players from the season before were had season-ending injuries. They were done. Um, Eliza Winston, one of the top players on the team, transferred midway through the season. And then Moira Joyner, another starting guard, went out on concussion, and players were just going down left and right and didn't really give Susie Merchant a lot to work with. Coming into this season, I think it was fairly optimistic. The team was looking really good. Kamaria McDaniel and Gabby Elliott, two transfers from Baylor and Clemson, were both looking fantastic. Matilda Eck, Dee Dee Hageman, who were freshmen last year and came out really big when the Spartans just kind of lost a lot of their top players. They came out and had a big role as freshmen, and they're continuing to do that now. At the start of the season, they weren't really playing anyone that was much of a threat, putting up lots of points. And then the team headed off to the PKI and played Iowa State and Oregon. Yeah, Iowa State, Oregon, and fell hard. And those were two top teams, and the team just did not show up. Shooting went down, and like you said, they would win some, they would lose some. And when I left for winter break, they were on a bit of a losing streak, and then over winter break, they beat number 4 Indiana, and that was huge. That was awesome for the team. They looked really good. They've been doing a great job all year on the just having a nice full court press, forcing lots of turnovers. I think in almost every game that they've played, they have forced more turnovers than the other team, but sometimes that still doesn't work out for them. Against Purdue, they lost in overtime, and they had forced over 30 turnovers, and they still lost the game. Shooting has just not been something the team has struggled. And Gabby Elliott, like I said, transferred from Clemson, was putting up big points and is now out, tore her ACL against Ohio State, I believe. And so she's out for the season. And since she went out, the team struggled a little bit. They've lost some games they really shouldn't have lost. Last Wednesday, lost to Wisconsin in overtime, and then went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and didn't necessarily play bad. It was a game where they were losing by maybe 5 points, and then in the fourth quarter just completely gave up. So I know we were talking today, the Iowa game is very focused around Caitlin Clark, as it normally would be when any team plays Iowa. She's one of the top women's basketball college players, and today at media availability, every question aimed towards Susie Merchant for the most part was about Caitlin Clark. And I think that that is going to be a very interesting game. Michigan State has a fairly good record against ranked opponents in the Breslin Center. They did last year and this year. But this Iowa game is going to be a challenge. And then on Sunday, they're going to face Rutgers, which Rutgers is, I believe, 8-11 on the season. They're 2-5 in Big Ten. It's a team that Michigan State would like to see the victory, but it's a fairly similar situation to Wisconsin, where it's a game they should have had in the bag and fell short. So it'll be interesting to see. This is going to be a really crucial week for them.
And I know they played, so they just played Michigan, right?
Yes.
Was that their last game?
Yes.
So Michigan, is doing, I would say that they're a pretty good team, I guess.
Yes, they are. You hate to say it, but it's true.
So I'm going to admit, I didn't watch too much of the game. Okay. But I did see, weren't they like neck and neck at one point, and then they lost by 20? How did that work?
Yes. So unfortunately, the whole beat did travel to Ann Arbor. I didn't go because I was actually supposed to be working hockey and got that game taken by the network kind of last minute. So I was not on the approved travel list, unfortunately. Oh, our fire alarm is going off. So, but I know it is a drill. So we're just going to ignore that. I promise I am being safe. I was emailed that there would be a drill today. so hopefully no one yells at me for being in here. But moving on from that, um, so yes, so I was unfortunately not in Ann Arbor, like with the rest of the beat, was supposed to be working that hockey game. But in that game, from what I know, from what I listened to when I tuned into our broadcast, whole time, both teams were shooting fairly the same. Michigan State was putting in a very good fight, um, and doing a really good job defensively at stopping Michigan. And then in that fourth quarter, they just kind of gave up. They lost all energy. Shots were not going in. The whole team was really they just looked tired. They looked exhausted. They weren't keeping up, and Michigan really took advantage of that. And they have a lot of strong players, a lot of them who returned from last year, and they completely took advantage of that exhaustion that you saw from Michigan State and just completely pulled ahead. And Michigan State let them. They didn't put up much of a fight there in the end. And we were talking today about it, actually. It should be interesting when they come to the Breslin Center, because last year Michigan was ranked, came to the Breslin Center first, and Michigan State won that game, put in an awesome fight and won it, and then went to the Chrysler Building, and I believe in the fourth quarter shot 7% from the paint, which is a statistic that will always remain in my head. I remember writing about it because I was in shock. Yikes. 7%. It was right. It was just so. It was the same sort of thing. They put up a fairly good fight, but in the end, I'm just hearing noises as this fire alarm is going off, but I promise it is all good. There's no fires in the building. But yeah, and it was the same sort of scenario where Michigan State just kind of gave up in the last quarter.
That sucks. Wow.
Yeah.
And so I guess, like, for Iowa, what do you think Michigan State needs to do to, I mean, hopefully win the game? It looks like Iowa's a pretty good team. How many games have they lost? Like 4?
Something like that. They've been a fairly dominant team in women's basketball for a while now, especially, again, with Caitlin Clark. I think it's interesting because a lot of people look at Caitlin Clark because she's just an absolutely outstanding basketball player. And every question, like I said today, was focused around Caitlin Clark. Game notes, everything is Caitlin Clark, but it's a team. It's not just Caitlin Clark, and the rest of the team still plays very well. And so I think it's really important for Michigan State not just to look to Caitlin Clark. I think Mo Joyner is going to be the one tasked with covering her, but that doesn't mean the rest of the team can just fall short on who they have, who they're watching, because their other players will put up points and they will put them up fast against Michigan State. So it's something that Michigan State really needs to zone in on their defense and work and use that to their advantage. They have so many forced turnovers on the season. They've been a very good team defensively. And so I think once making sure that they don't just hone in on Caitlin Clark and forget that the rest of the team exists, and also looking toward their offense. They've had a lot of trouble shooting. Kamaria McDaniel has been one of their top shooters, and against Michigan, I think only had 12 points. She is a player that has done a really good job getting the ball in the net and kind of fallen short lately, and I think it would be nice to see her kind of regain the speed that she had at the beginning of the season against Iowa. And it was the same against Wisconsin. The team had a lot of trouble shooting. Moira Joyner has been a player that's kind of come out for the team recently. So I think those are the big things, just to remember that the team is not just Caitlin Clark, and that just working on those shots. And today at practice, you could tell how much they were working on shooting drills and getting an offensive setup going. So tomorrow's game, I can't say I'm totally optimistic about, because it is Iowa and they're just an insane powerhouse of a team.
I'm just looking at this. They just beat Penn State.
108.
108 to 67. That's a lot of points.
That, I believe, was a program record in points against a Big Ten team. And
So,
for any college
so
team,
Caitlin
108
Clark
points.
Caitlin Clark is first in scoring. She has 26.8 points per game. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And Monica Zinano, is that how you say that? Zinano
Yeah,
is
I think so.
sixth in scoring at 17 points per game.
Yeah.
And then Clark also leads the league in assists with 7, sorry, not 17. That'd be a lot. 7.3 assists per game. McKenna Warnock is 10th in 3-point field goals made, making 2 per game. Like, that is, oh my God. So, yeah, that is a potent offense. My
It's a
goodness.
dominant offensive team, and they actually, it was very random that I was watching this game. It just kind of happened by chance. But after the Michigan State men's basketball game, the Michigan Iowa women's basketball game was on, and we just kind of left it on TV. I might have been the only one in the room paying attention but I
Right.
was, and Michigan was actually leading Iowa for a while, and then Iowa came back in the fourth and won it. But again, Michigan is another fairly strong team right now in women's basketball. So it wasn't too much of a surprise necessarily. So yeah, I think, and that's the thing, looking at this team, well, yes, Caitlin Clark is a giant factor. That's also a player that you're going to want to guard her. You're going to want to do your best, but she's also a very hard player to stop. You're not going to shut her down completely. It's just not going to happen. And so remembering that there are more players on the team than just Caitlin Clark is very important.
So, that game's going to be interesting. Where's that at? Big Ten Plus?
Um, yes, the game is on Big Ten Plus tomorrow.
So I want to end this with one thing, and we've talked about women's basketball, we've talked about hockey. What would you say is your favorite all-time play call that you've made?
That's a good one. See, with hockey, it's not too, you might know this, I don't know, but this was my first year ever calling play-by-play for hockey. It's what I've always wanted to do. I was sidelined last year, got a chance to be on play-by-play again as a sophomore in college. I'm not complaining, very happy about that. And definitely had some improvements. I'm sure I would cringe very bad if I listened to my very first call of the game. It's very hard. It is not easy to pick up, and I have huge respect for the guys at Impact that do it for the radio. I don't know if I could do it for radio. Being on
radio's
TV,
radio's a lot harder because then you gotta illustrate the game, and that's tougher to do.
TV, well, definitely easier than radio. Still very difficult. It's a very fast-paced game, and I think it's not that I didn't know hockey, but talking about it in the way I now had to talk about it was a little bit of a change. And it sounds very funny, but my favorite call might have to be the call of Cole Krieger's goal on the overtime winner in the Penn State series on Friday. Just one, I really like that clip and that call because there are sometimes, especially in hockey, and I do this, and even announcers in the NHL do it. You lose the puck and you have no idea what just happened and you just completely stumble, and the goal call is kind of like stuttered a little bit because you don't entirely know what happens until you see the light go off. You just lose the puck completely. So sometimes goal calls are really hard, and I think that one I really liked the way it got set up. I had each player knew what happened every time, got it in, and I mean, the excitement was there. I think if anyone's seen that clip, it's pretty evident. The excitement was there, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, in hockey, it's an exciting game. You always want to have like those exciting goal calls, and not just the call itself, but the way I was discussing the game prior, that would probably have to be my favorite. I'm trying to think if there are any other moments that have like really stuck out to me. It might have been the last goal when MSU took the lead in the second game of the Ohio State series to sweep it. I
Really?
can't remember off the top of my head who even scored the goal.
Hmm.
It might have been Jagger Joshua.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I just remember there was a lot of excitement in that call. And again, it's one of those things where the fun of being an announcer in college hockey is then you follow all the college hockey accounts and you're scrolling through your feed and just keep hearing your voice and
You
like,
keep
oh
hearing
my
it. Yeah,
God,
that's pretty cool.
like it's very cool. And constantly. And so like there are certain ones that'll always stick out to me because it'd be a great play, something awesome would happen, and then I'd just be scrolling and be like NCAA ice hockey, Big Ten hockey, Michigan State hockey, everything, and you're just scrolling and you hear all those. Um, but the overtime winner, and I mean, that's an exciting moment to call.
Dubinsky to Krieger. Krieger looking for that shot, gets it, and it's good! Cole Krieger with the shot, and the Spartans storm the ice as they take it. An amazing look there from Cole Krieger, just as I said, causing that confusion as they did with all 3 goals in the game. What an incredible way to end this game by Michigan State.
Especially
right, just in general. I mean, it's exciting to be there and
it
experience.
was so exciting to be there. I mean, Munn was completely sold out, and it was a pretty crucial game. I mean, Michigan State just broke their losing streak. It's an overtime game and a game that Michigan State started down. I really enjoyed calling that entire game. I think it was my best call of the season and definitely the most fun to call. But that ending moment was pretty exciting.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you sadly won't be on air anymore. Well, for the rest of the season.
No, well, it is funny. So, to preface, I'm on Michigan State ski racing team. So, these weekends in January and February, I have races, and it just so happened
So
that.
now we'll have to go see you on the hill, right?
Yeah, now you can see me as a college athlete, technically, in a sense. Um, but last week was the 1 week that we have off of racing. And we have one other week off of racing, and it is the Michigan series, but we don't have that
But
game.
Of course, that's going to be on Big Ten.
That's going to be on Big Ten,
So.
and there's actually, I think, only one more hockey game that Big Ten Plus has, and it's the first game of the Notre Dame series, because the second game, once again, got taken by the network. It is the one downside of having such a good hockey team.
They usually take the weekend games because that's the only time they can fit it into their airtime.
That is the one downside of the hockey team being great, means I get to call less games, which is it's bittersweet. But yeah, I probably would have only been at one more game of the season. Sad I still won't be there, but I think if I was gonna finish my game, not in my career, I'm gonna be at Michigan State for a little while longer, but for my last call of the season, I think it couldn't have gone better, honestly. I think that was a really great game to end it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, that was a brilliant, just incredible overtime winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for much more. You couldn't
No,
write a better
you couldn't.
script. But anyway, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You can what's your Twitter handle again?
My Twitter handle is.
You forgot your Twitter handle.
I was about to say my Instagram handle, and that was the wrong thing. I'm pretty sure it's just. Oh no, okay, I was right. I had it right. I had to check. It's just Marin, MARIN _Klein, KLEIN _ again.
Perfect.
You'll know it's me. My face is right there.
Face is right there.
Face is right there. I think I
Right.
have the exact same hairstyle in my little background from an interview. It's perfect. You can't miss it. But yes.
Perfect. So, well, anyway, everyone, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with an MSU basketball interview. Today's episode is sponsored by Nudge Printing. Quality MSU apparel from 2 quality MSU alums. Go to nudgeprinting.com and use the promo code TRYUS for $10 off of any Michigan State t-shirt. While you're there, you can pick up any merch from any of their licensed collegiate other schools. It's very fun, very good stuff. They have Northern Michigan, they have Grand Valley State, they have really just name anything. They probably have it except for the losers down south. Again, that is nudgeprinting.com. Use the code TRYUS for $10 off of any Michigan State t-shirt. Thanks again for joining us for today's episode. Again, you can find Marin Klein on a bunch of MSU broadcasts. She also does, obviously, the podcast with Impact Radio on women's basketball. Very fun stuff. Very cool. Very awesome. We loved having her on today. Sydney will be back next week to join me. But first, we're actually going to leave with a clip of Michigan State men's basketball. So we've been doing these. I think we mentioned it in the interview with Marin, but we've been doing these post-game video interviews / video reactions to the game. We did one for the Purdue game when Michigan State lost 64-63. It was a lot of fun. Did it with Paolo Gianandrea, and he was awesome. He covered the game. He was there. Came in and interviewed him just to get his general reactions for the game and what he thought, and we did our reactions to it. So that was very fun. It was very cool stuff. Listen to it right now. It's on YouTube as well at youtube.com/@Spartans Illustrated. Roll the tape.
Here's a screen down. You got a shot. Walker missed it, and Purdue escapes the Breslin Center.
Brad LaPlante and Paolo Gianandrea here with Spartans Illustrated at the Breslin Center. As you can tell, witnessed a 64-63 loss to Purdue. Paolo, what are your general thoughts?
Well, appreciate it, Brad. I would say, for coming off a loss, 7-game winning streak coming in, might expect a little bit of a drop-off maybe emotionally. That was not the case here today. Definitely a lot of energy in the building. MSU at points looked like they were the better team. At points looked like they were trying to give it away. It was sort of a game of runs, and Purdue ended up on top 1 point. A lot of small factors indicated it, and we can get into that, but just very razor-thin margin today.
Yeah, and specifically, too, like MSU was down so early. Do you think that maybe performing, in a better, full, complete game, how much do you think that played a role?
Yeah, and that's definitely something Izzo touched on, too, where he said this game was essentially lost in the first couple minutes because they were so careless with the ball. You saw Purdue was not shooting very well in the 30s around that time and still didn't really scratch a double-digit lead. So MSU was within striking distance despite not taking very good care of the ball, despite not shooting well themselves. So had the game been more level early, I think their play through the next 30 minutes that showed you they probably were the superior team in those minutes, and that deficit early definitely dug them too big of a hole, I would say.
Right, I know, too, and I was thinking about this specifically with Hogard and those last 2 free throws that he shot. I mean, he was 1 for 3 today. He made the first one, and the last 2 that he, I think that was in the last 3 minutes. He missed them both. I mean, you make one of those. Do you think that also, could play a factor into, MSU potentially putting this one into overtime or winning?
Yeah, so that's something actually I specifically asked him. Everybody was mulling over the turnovers and, Edey's last possession and kind of the major things that influenced this game. But I said, AJ, as far as maybe another factor you could point to as influencing this game, influencing the outcome, what would you say? And he'd say, I definitely take responsibility for those 2 free throws. He said if he would have knocked those down, he believes they would have came out with the victory. Obviously, I believe Akins missed a front end on one as well. So you lose by 1 point, you look to those. Those are possessions that you're not handling the ball. You're at the free throw line. You definitely want to knock those in a 1-possession game. So I would say AJ himself pointed to that specifically being a potential swinging factor in this game as well.
Yeah, and it's tough, too, because you have the number 3 team in the country come in, right? And you have potential. You have the chance to beat them. And, there is the moral victory, right, where on one hand, yes, it's great that you did almost win this game. You had a chance to win this game. But again, another missed opportunity, it seems, for MSU.
Yeah, so, I'm going to keep reverting back to what the coaches and players said. Izzo flat out said, I'm not one to ever take silver linings, moral victories, but he said this is an instance where I went into the locker room and told them how proud I was of them for competing, where he expressed he normally would not do so. So he, as well as the players, seem pretty proud of their effort. Obviously, sometimes that's not enough, and they all seem to regurgitate that there are no moral victories here. But as far as maybe not playing to the best of their ability, they played a very good game, but still left some things on the table in a 1-point loss to what you could argue is the best team in the nation against arguably the National Player of the Year, Edie. You see he towers out there. He's very difficult to defend, and they did do a good job despite him getting over 30 points. They executed their game plan to play him one-on-one, limit the guards. They did that for the most part. Towards the end, you saw the guards get free, kind of hit some big threes when MSU was going on runs and really quietening the crowd. So,
yeah, and Tyson Walker too, just having the game of his life. What do you think about him taking that last shot?
You live with it if he's the one to miss the shot. Obviously, it was not the best look from the outside. He was well defended and 5-6 feet off the three-point line when you only need 2. Obviously, it's only time for a catch and shoot down second and a half down 1. Obviously, you want to have the ball in his hands. Maybe could have gotten a better look, but you're obviously limited when you got to catch and shoot with the first guy you get it to. But that was an instance where you saw Malik Hall early in the year actually against Kentucky, 5 seconds or less on the game clock. He got free for open dunks. He was just kind of the middle of the center of the play in those instances. That's something they were missing, just a guy to get the ball to who's capable of shooting from anywhere. So Walker a little undersized, easier to defend. Just turned out that it just didn't go in. You got to live with it.
And so I noticed this, and I don't know that anybody else was talking about it, but Monty Sissoko didn't shoot at all.
I did not notice that. I honestly did.
So and I saw it on the ESPN scorecard. It said 0 for 0.
Okay.
So I guess does that just mean that Zach Edey was on him all the time, or what's the deal there?
Now, in the past, it seems Izzo's tended to, what he said is, I picked my poison and I picked that poison again. He tends to produce strong big men one-on-one, let them do what they will. Let's limit the guards. Let's play it that way. Now, I overlooked Sissoko not even getting a shot. Did not even notice that. But I'd say, that didn't seem to jump out as, man, Sissoko's not contributing his part. It's, it seemed the game plan was to get it in the guys that were shooting well. Walker, obviously, game of his life, as you said. Hogard shooting the ball well. Aside from the guards, there was not a lot of production elsewhere, and it seemed that the plan was to put it in the guards' hands where MSU felt they had the advantage and take advantage there. As far as Sissoko not getting an attempt, obviously you'd like to see him clean some boards up, put it up, maybe get him a lob, but it didn't seem that was the focal point today.
And lastly, really just moving forward too, where does this team, how confident do you feel in this team, with Hall out, with Hall being out, and that's obviously going to be a big piece that's missing from him. So where does this team go, and how much is that going to hurt them?
So, coming into today, I believe they were 7-1 until that Illinois game with Hall and Akins in the lineup. So obviously very strong with full strength. Now, you see what happens at the end of, for instance, the Wisconsin game. Hall's just in the right place, right time. Matchup problem. Can get in the lane. He can shoot from 3. He's a problem for opposing teams. He's a strong guy, gets in for rebounds. So talk about the heart and soul and an identity. He kind of embodies that of do-it-all kind of guy, not very selfish, always making the right play. And Izzo himself said, we wanted to go out there and do this for him today because he's crushed and didn't exactly lay out what the extent of the injury might be, but it seems like he's going to be out for some significant time once again, and that's it's definitely going to be detrimental. But what is encouraging is you see how well the guards can play and how they can elevate the play of everybody else on the floor, and they can get a bucket when you need it. That was Malik Hall. He is that bucket when you need it kind of guy. But they also have Hauser, Hogard, Walker, three guys I would say are just as good, if not more capable in that respect. So obviously a front court guy where you're thin, it's troublesome. But on the other hand, you see the guards are able to carry it in a sport that is determined by guard play. It's definitely crushing to a team that is thin, as Izzo said, but as far as being able to overcome it, if you have an opponent that maybe doesn't have a 7'4" center, you might be able to overcome it. So
Right, and I was thinking of that too, because Edie had, I mean, how many points did he have?
32, I believe.
Right, and the rest of his team had, pennies compared to that, right? So
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, you could have, should have, would have, right? But if you take Edie off that team, the Purdue team is, I feel like, a lot more flat. And so, I don't know. I mean, moving forward, MSU plays, who is it, Rutgers next, right? So that, that's an important game. Big Ten, obviously, again. How do you think MSU can right the ship in this 2-game losing streak?
Well, I would say in the 2 losses, you could argue they should have won both, which obviously that can be disheartening to a team, or that can be a little inspirational. Now, seeing the makeup of this team and how they're able to respond to adversity so far this year, they seem to be pretty resilient. You go back to that Wisconsin game, and I'm going back to that because that was a tough environment. That was a crucial spot, big road Big Ten game against a ranked opponent, and they hit some big shots when they were down, and it was back and forth. Could have easily fell flat and died there. So this team does seem to have a bit more resolve than ones in years past, and going from a 7-game win streak to now potentially dropping 3 straight. If you were to drop that Rutgers game, I would think they're going to be pretty focused after probably playing their A- game these past 2 games, and a couple shots didn't go, and that determined the outcome. They've been right there. I don't foresee them breaking stride. I feel like they would come away with that one.
Cool. Well, we look forward to it, obviously. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one.